So decentralized AI. It's a term we're hearing more and more these days.
Yeah, it's definitely got people talking.
But what does it actually mean? Like, what's the big idea behind it?
Well, you know how we usually think of AI as this thing controlled by big tech companies?
Right, like Google's AI or Amazon's AI.
Exactly. Decentralized AI flips that on its head. It's about taking that power back and distributing it.
Okay, so instead of my data going to some big server farm, it stays on my phone.
You got it. And not just your phone, but potentially any device you own. It's about leveraging the combined processing power of all those devices.
Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal. But how does this actually play out in the real world? I mean, what can we actually do with decentralized AI?
Well, we were looking at this report from technologist and futurist Joseph Raczynski. He was at MIT's MTech Digital Conference. And
Okay, MTech, that's a big one. Lots of cutting-edge stuff there.
Right, exactly. So he was reporting on this session led by MIT Associate Professor Ramesh Raskar. And Raskar was painting this picture of a future where AI is like having a super smart personal assistant.
I've heard that one before. What makes this different?
It's all about personalization on a whole new level. Like, imagine you're planning your kid's birthday party.
Okay, every parent's favorite task, right?
Right. But instead of spending hours browsing Pinterest and Amazon, you just tell your AI, hey, my kid's turning 8, loves dinosaurs, help me throw a party.
And it takes it from there. Finds the decorations, sends out the invites.
Not just that, because it has access to your photos, your calendar, even your kid's online activity.
It knows that my kid actually prefers herbivores to a T-Rex, even though he says he doesn't.
Exactly. And it can even connect with local businesses, see what's in stock, maybe even create a 3D model of your living room so you can visualize the setup before you lift a finger.
Okay, that's impressive. But let's get real for a second.
Sure.
Party planning is one thing, but what about more serious applications?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. Raczynski also talked about healthcare.
Okay, I'm listening.
Healthcare is a big one. He gave this example of a doctor in rural Texas treating a patient with long COVID. Now, it's a complex condition, right?
Yeah, and doctors are still trying to figure out the best way to treat it.
Exactly. But imagine that doctor having access to an AI that has analyzed data from millions of patient cases all over the world.
So instead of just relying on their own knowledge and experience,
You'd have this huge, constantly updating database to tap into.
so they could potentially get faster, more accurate diagnoses and treatment plans.
Exactly. And for a small fee, too, which is important because not every hospital has the resources of a big research center.
That's incredible. We're talking about democratizing access to the best medical expertise in the world. But how does this all work? What makes decentralized AI possible now?
There are two key things driving this. One is the rise of these incredibly powerful yet tiny computer chips called NPUs, or neural processing units.
NPUs, okay. What are those all about?
Think of them as tiny brains that are now being embedded in everything from our phones to our appliances.
Okay, so they give us a processing power needed to run sophisticated AI locally, right?
Precisely. And the second thing is the fact that everything is connected these days, the Internet of Things, all these devices talking to each other.
It creates this perfect environment for decentralized AI to flourish, like a nervous system spanning the globe.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got all these mini brains connecting and sharing information. Sounds amazing on paper.
It does, doesn't it?
But I have to ask, with all this talk about data sharing, what about the security concerns? I mean, isn't this a privacy nightmare waiting to happen?
Yeah, you're right. You can't talk about decentralized AI without addressing the elephant in the room, right? Privacy and security are absolutely critical. If our data is going to be used to train AI, we need to know it's being handled responsibly.
So how do we make sure decentralized AI doesn't devolve into some kind of data free-for-all?
Well, Raczynski talks about something called federated learning.
Federated learning, what's that?
Basically, instead of sending your data to a central server to train the AI algorithms come to your device.
Okay, so my data stays put.
Exactly. The AI learns what it needs to locally, and then it shares only the insights it's gained with the larger network.
So it's like sending out these little AI scouts to gather intel without compromising the data itself.
That's a great way to put it. Your raw data never leaves your control.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better. But even with federated learning, aren't there still challenges? I mean, we're talking about creating this vast network of AI systems all working together.
Absolutely. There are still hurdles to overcome.
Like what?
Interoperability, for one. Meaning we need to make sure all these different AI systems can actually talk to each other. Imagine a world where your AI assistant can't communicate with your smart home system or your healthcare provider's AI.
Oh, man. Talk about a tech headache.
Right, it would be chaos. So we need universal standards protocols so that all these systems can seamlessly work together.
That's a tall order, getting everyone to agree on standards.
It is. It requires massive collaboration, governments, tech companies, researchers, all on the same page. And it's not just a technological hurdle, it's a societal one, too.
How so?
Well, we have to figure out the economics of it all. I mean, in a decentralized future, how do we make sure that the people contributing their data are fairly compensated? We've seen how companies like Google and Facebook have built empires on our data.
Yeah, and we see very little of that profit.
Exactly. So how do we avoid repeating that in a decentralized world? Raczynski says, accurately assessing the value of data is a huge challenge in itself.
Yeah, it's not like you can just slap a price tag on it.
Right. And then there's the question of how to distribute those rewards. Do we get micropayments every time our data is used? Discounts on services? It's a whole new way of thinking about data ownership and value.
Almost like we need a whole new economic model designed for the age of decentralized AI. It's interesting you mentioned Google and Facebook because this whole decentralization thing feels kind of similar to what's happening with cryptocurrency.
Raczynski actually makes that connection in his report.
Really?
Yeah, both movements at their core are about shifting power away from centralized institutions and giving more control to individuals.
Decentralized power to the people. Sounds good in theory. But let's be honest, the cryptocurrency world hasn't exactly been a shining example of stability and success.
That's fair. It's been a bumpy ride, to say the least.
Volatility, scams, not to mention the environmental impact of some of those crypto mining operations. So how do we make sure decentralized AI doesn't fall into the same traps?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do we learn from those mistakes and chart a better path forward?
So how do we make sure decentralized AI doesn't go the way of, some of the crypto projects that have, well, gone sideways?
Raczynski seems to think it comes down to two main things.
Okay, lay it on me.
First, we got to shift the focus. It can't just be about hype and speculation, like, oh, how can I get rich off this?
Right, because we've seen how that movie ends.
Exactly. It has to be about solving real-world problems, making people's lives better.
So less about creating the next Bitcoin and more about, using AI to tackle climate change or make healthcare more accessible.
Precisely. Focus on the tangible benefits. And then the second thing, equally important, is governance. We need strong ethical governance from day one.
Because without it, it's just the Wild West all over again, right?
Right. Clear rules, regulations, oversight. It can't be a free-for-all.
And that's a tough one because technology moves so fast and regulations always seem to be playing catch-up.
It's a challenge, for sure. But it's essential if we want decentralized AI to benefit everyone, not just a select few. One of the things I found really interesting in Raczynski's report was this idea that decentralized AI could actually be more aligned with human values, which sounds kind of counterintuitive, right?
It does, a little. I mean, we often think of AI as this cold, calculating machine. How does decentralizing it make it more human?
Well, one of the biggest criticisms of AI today is the lack of transparency.
Right.
These algorithms are making decisions that affect our lives, but we often don't know how they're arriving at those decisions.
The whole black box problem, right?
Exactly. And that can be unnerving, especially in areas like healthcare or finance, where the stakes are high. But with decentralized AI, because the data and processing are distributed, there's a lot more potential for explainability.
Meaning you can actually trace the decision-making process, you can understand the reasoning behind it.
Exactly. It's less like magic and more like, well, a tool that we can understand and ultimately trust.
And that trust is going to be key, right? I mean, if people don't trust decentralized AI, they're not going to use it.
It's crucial. But building that trust takes time, it takes transparency, and it takes demonstrating that these systems are truly working for us, not the other way around.
So where do we go from here? What needs to happen to make this vision of a more human-centered, decentralized AI future a reality?
Honestly, I think it's going to take all hands on deck. Governments setting ethical guidelines, tech companies collaborating on open standards, and researchers pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
It's a collective effort, it really is.
And we all have a role to play, whether we realize it or not.
Because this isn't just about some abstract technology, right?
Yeah.
This is about shaping the future.
It's about how we live, how we work, how we interact with the world around us and with each other.
And it's about making sure that we're the ones in control, not the algorithms.
Exactly. So, as you continue to learn about decentralized AI, keep asking questions, keep exploring the possibilities, and most importantly, think about how you want to shape this technology, because the future is being written right now.
It really is. And that's what we're all about here on The Deep Dive, getting you the information you need to navigate this complex and ever-changing world. So until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.